My friend Kenji works security at an old elementary school in Sendai, and he swears the janitor never left. The school closed 20 years ago after enrollment dropped to nothing. Now it sits empty, waiting for demolition that never comes. Kenji's job is simple: walk the halls twice a night, check the lock, file a report. But on his first night, he heard the squeaking, a wet mop being dragged across linoleum floors. Squeak, squeak, squeak. He followed the sound down the main hallway, flashlight trembling in his grip. The sound stopped, but the floors, they were spotless, perfectly clean. Kenji called out into the darkness. "Hello, is someone there?" Only his echo answered back. The next night, the same thing happened. And the next, always at 2:30 a.m., always ending at the same classroom door. Room 3B. Kenji asked the maintenance company about the previous janitor, an old man named Yamada-san, who worked there for 30 years. He died of a heart attack. Right outside room 3B, they found him clutching his mop. One night, Kenji decided to wait by that classroom door. He crouched in the shadows at exactly 2:25 a.m. The squeaking started right on time, getting closer. Then he saw the mop bucket rolling by itself down the hallway, with no one pushing it. Behind it, wet footprints appeared on the clean floor, step by step getting closer to where Kenji hid. The bucket stopped right in front of room 3B, and then Kenji heard breathing, heavy labored, like an old man catching his breath. A voice whispered in the darkness, "Still so much to clean." Kenji ran that night. He quit the next morning, but sometimes when he passes that old school, he can still hear the squeaking, even from the street. They say Yamada-san is still working his shift. Some jobs you never retire from. There's a song that plays in abandoned schools across Japan. No one knows who's playing. My sister Yuki learned this the hard way when she took a job photographing old buildings for demolition. The assignment was a middle school in rural Gifu Prefecture, closed for 15 years, ivy crawling up its walls like reaching fingers. Yuki arrived on a gray October afternoon, camera bag slung over her shoulder. The front doors were chained shut, but a side window had been broken. She slipped inside. The hallways were thick with dust and shadow. Posters still hung on bulletin boards, faded announcements for school festivals that would never come. She photographed empty classrooms where desks sat in perfect rows, as if the students had just stepped out and might return any moment. Then she heard it, a piano melody drifting from somewhere deeper in the building. Soft, melancholy, beautiful. Yuki followed the sound through winding corridor. It led her to the music room at the end of the west wing. The door was slightly open. Through the gap, she could see an old upright piano. The keys moved by themselves, pressing down in perfect rhythm. But the bench was empty. Yuki raised her camera, hands trembling. The flash went off. The music stopped. For a moment, the silence was absolute. Then the piano bench creaked, as if someone had just stood up. Yuki backed away slowly, not daring to breathe. Footsteps echoed across the music room floor. Coming toward the door, behind her, the piano started playing again. But this time, the melody was different, discordant, like someone was pounding the keys in frustration. Yuki made it to her car and drove away without looking back. But when she developed the photos later, the music room shot showed something impossible. A young girl in a school uniform sitting at the piano bench, her face turned toward the camera, eyes wide with surprise, as if she hadn't expected to be seen. The school was demolished a month later, but neighbors still report hearing piano music drifting from the empty lot where it used to stand. In 1987, a student drowned in the pool at Sakura High School, and some say she's still trying to survive. My cousin Hiroshi was part of the night maintenance crew that cleaned the school during summer break. The indoor pool had been drained for repair, sitting empty under flickering fluorescent light. But every morning, they'd find puddles of chlorinated water on the pool, wet footprints leading from the deep end to nowhere. Hiroshi thought it was a prank at first, kids breaking in to mess with the maintenance crew. So one night he decided to hide in the equipment room and watch. The pool area was eerily quiet, lit only by emergency lighting. At exactly 11:47 p.m., the diving board creaked. Hiroshi peered through the equipment room window. The diving board was bending downward, as if someone was standing on the edge, but no one was there. Then came the splash, a massive splash echoing through the empty pool. Water erupted from nowhere, showering the deck. And then, the sound of someone swimming, desperate strokes echoing off the walls. But the pool was empty, just cracked concrete and old drain cover. The swimming sounds grew more frantic, like someone struggling to stay afloat. Then came the voice, a young girl calling out, "Help me, I can't reach the edge." Hiroshi burst from the equipment room, looking wildly around the pool. Nothing, just silence and the smell of chlorine in the air. He called out, "Where are you? I'll help." The voice came again, weaker now. Down here at the bottom, Hiroshi looked down into the empty deep end and saw her, a pale figure lying on the cracked concrete, looking up at him. Her school swimsuit dark with water that shouldn't exist. She reached up toward him with waterlogged fingers. "Why didn't you save me?" she whispered. Hiroshi blinked and she was gone. But the chlorine smell lingered, and wet handprints covered the pool's edge. He learned later about Tanaka Mizu, the girl who drowned during swim practice. No one saw her go under. They found her at the bottom of the deep end, 20 minutes too late. The pool was filled with fresh water the next week, but swimmers still report something brushing against their leg, something that feels like desperate fingers. Every October, Tokyo's Minami High School holds its annual festival, but there's always one extra student in the class photos. My teacher, Suzuki-sensei, told me this story after he noticed the same face appearing year after year. It started 5 years ago during the school's cultural festival. Students decorated the hallways with paper lanterns and festival banners. Each class prepared performances, plays, music, dance. It should have been a celebration, but the photography club kept capturing something unusual. In every group photo, there was a girl they didn't recognize, always standing at the back, always slightly out of focus. Her school uniform was old-fashioned, like something from the 1970s, but no one remembered seeing her during the actual festival. The photography teacher Yamamoto-sensei decided to investigate. He compared the festival photos with old school yearbooks and found her, Ito Sachiko, Class 2B, 1978. She died in a car accident 3 days before that year's cultural festival, the same festival she had been planning for months. Yamamoto-sensei shared this discovery with his photography student. They decided to keep quiet about it, but watch for her more carefully. The next October, during festival preparations, strange things began happening. Students would catch glimpses of someone in an old uniform walking the hall, always just at the edge of their vision. Decorations would be moved overnight, rearranged into more beautiful patterns. Music would play softly from empty classrooms, as if someone was practicing for a performance they'd never give. On the day of the festival, Yamamoto-sensei positioned himself strategically. He wanted to see Sachiko before she appeared in the photo. During the closing ceremony group photo, he scanned the crowd carefully. There, in the back row, a girl with sad eyes and an old-fashioned uniform. She was smiling, but it was a smile full of longing. As the camera flashed, she looked directly at Yamamoto-sensei and mouthed the word, "Thank you for letting me stay." When he blinked, she was gone. But in the developed photo, there she was again, standing with her classmate 45 years later. The school never stops her from attending the festival. After all, she's been waiting so long. Some celebrations transcend death. There's a classroom in Osaka that no one uses anymore because the last teacher never finished his lesson. My girlfriend Akane works as a substitute teacher, filling in at different schools across the city. Last spring, she was assigned to cover a math class at an old junior high school. Room 201, second floor, end of the hall. When Akane arrived, she noticed the room felt different, colder than the other classroom. The chalkboard was covered with complex equations, formulas she didn't recognize. When she tried to erase them, the chalk marks wouldn't come off, as if they'd been burned into the board. The students filed in quietly, more subdued than usual. They kept glancing nervously at the teacher's desk. One student, a girl named Yui, raised her hand. "Sensei, you know about Hashimoto-sensei, right?" Akane hadn't been told much, just that the previous teacher had left suddenly. Yui continued in a whisper. "Collapsed during class, right there by the blackboard. Heart attack. He was writing those equations when it happened. He died trying to finish the lesson." That afternoon, Akane stayed late to prepare for the next day's classes. As the sun set, room 201 grew unnaturally dark. She turned on all the light. Shadows seemed to cling to the corner. At exactly 7:15 p.m., she heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, stopping right outside the classroom door. The doorknob turned, but no one came in. Instead, she heard the squeak of chalk on the blackboard. Akane looked up and saw fresh equations appearing on the board, written by invisible hands. Each number and symbol formed slowly, methodically, as if someone was teaching a class that wasn't there. Then came the voice, raspy, tired but determined. Now if we substitute x for the variable here. The chalk continued writing, solving the complex equation step by step. You see, class, mathematics is eternal. It never dies. Akane sat frozen at her desk, watching the lesson unfold. The voice grew weaker, more strained. Must finish the lesson. The chalk fell to the floor with a tiny click, and suddenly the room was completely silent. The equations on the board were complete, perfect mathematical proof, something Hashimoto-sensei had been working on for years. Akane left that night and never returned to room 201. But the students say, if you listen carefully after school, you can still hear Hashimoto-sensei teach. Some lessons are too important to leave unfinished.